Okay, so I think we can start with like a self-intro for fun here. Like, Keith, you can go first.
Hello, I'm Keith and I do Physics Olympiad.
I'm Taeyong and I've been like doing math at Physics Olympiad.
Hi, I'm Vivian and I do math Olympiads too.
Okay, so like, the whole point of like the podcast today is to address the problem of facing disappointment in Olympiads in general. So I think like the first question would be like, what was your first instance of disappointment in Olympiads? Vivian, would you like to go first?
Okay, so my first instance of disappointment was probably the first time I took like the USA Junior Math Olympiads, I didn't do that well. Like, okay, I qualified for MOF, but I didn't do like extremely well. And like I was relatively inexperienced with math competitions, like Olympiad math back then. And so like when I actually qualified for MOF, I didn't do very well in the classes or tests. Like a lot of times in the tests I got like barely any points. So that was a little bit discouraging. It was also online, so like really the tests were a lot of that camp experience. But yeah, it was pretty disappointing to not be able to do a lot of those problems. And over time, I guess like after practicing more problems, I got better at it. But at the beginning, it's always really rough when you don't know how to approach problems and often like end up not solving them.
Yeah, I think like a lot of us like face like disappointments early on in our like Olympiad journey. I had like a similar experience because in Singapore, right? Like both Keith and I are from Singapore. Like we have this thing called the Singapore Math Olympiad, which is like the US AMO equivalent, and we have like a junior section, which is like the USA JMO equivalent. So when I was like grade seven, when I was like 13 basically, I took the Singapore Math Olympiad Junior for the first time. Then going in like I think in Singapore, right, we have like a lot higher expectations for like doing well in Olympiads at a younger age. So like I went in there thinking that like I had to get first place and stuff. Then in the end, I think I got like 30 something place. But I still qualified for like the SIMO team, which is like the mob equivalent of Singapore. But then going there like inexperienced at 13, right? I completely like failed all the tests and like I didn't advance into the next round. Yeah. So I think initially I was like really disappointed too. What about Yuki?
Alright, so lots of like disappointments and difficulties early on. I think I'm gonna flip it around by describing a disappointment like all the way at the end, right? So uh I think there's like I'm not sure about if I'm not wrong in America, like you guys can take qualifying tests or like USAMO, USA4 multiple times. Like you can take it as many times as you want, and like you have a few chances to go for internationals. If you fail like the first time around. Whereas in Singapore we have like one chance to do the S4, the Singapore Physics Olympiad, and then if we like mess it up, it's like our only shot. So last year I was taking the Singapore Physics Olympiad, and then some very unexpected questions came up, which resulted in my getting a silver medal at the Physics Olympiad, which is problematic because I was actually hoping to go for the national team, and then to like get get a silver medal at like a national level competition was like really funny. So of course that came like as like a big disappointment. Just to like put you in like the emotional space of that moment. I was actually like on a holiday in Japan when I got the results, and so like I was on a flight to Tokyo, and which is peak irony because IFO this year is being held in Tokyo. So I was like like flying to Tokyo like damn, I'm not gonna take this flight next year. And then yeah, so definitely quite a low moment in my physics career. Uh and I've got to say like I'm not sure. So maybe as we like continue talking about this, you guys might be talking. I see the discussion heading a little bit towards dealing with failure in terms of like encouraging yourself to try again and like uh find new chances from there. But I think that there are also cases where people like hit failure at the end of their Olympic career. For example, they do really badly in an international Olympiad, or like there's just like some kind of failure cause happens like right at the end. And I think at that point in time, it's also important to learn how to like just accept failure and live with it to some extent. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it really hits home because like I'm 17 this year, so like I only have like one more chance to make either the IMO or IPO team, and like I'm like really anxious about it too. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I know like a lot of my friends got really close to like making the IMO team, but then didn't. And especially if it's your last year, it can be really like disappointing if you tried really hard to like make the IMO team or something, and then we're off by like just a small amount. And I don't have very much experience like dealing with this, but I think you just have to at some point accept that like you won't be doing competition math for your entire life, and at some point you're going to have to let go of it. And if you got that far, then that's already a pretty good accomplishment.
I feel like a lot of like the disappointment stems from like your approach to Olympiads in the first place, right? Like I feel like the reason why like me and Keith especially like felt like extremely disappointed when we were like facing Olympiads is that I feel like in Singapore, I'm not really sure whether it's the case in the States, but like getting into like an international Olympiad or like doing one Olympiads like one of the like few like important ways for it to like get into like a overseas university, like especially the States, because I think like a lot of like we're both from like a school called Raffles Institution in Singapore, and I think every year like only like 10 or like 20 people like get into like a uni in the States, right? And for us Olympiad students, the only way to like really like have a good chance of getting in is through like international Olympiads. So I think like all the stress and emphasis is placed into like doing well in them. So like once you like don't perform well in the Olympiads, right, you feel like your whole future is like basically gone. And I think that's where like majority of the disappointment like stems from.
Yeah, I always find it a bit funny how like Olympiads in Singapore are like an exam, like like in like not like in terms of format, but in terms of the importance that people place on them. They treat it like it's like a national exam that they have to like qualify for or something, which is a bit strange to me because after going back and rethinking why I did Olympiads for a while, I realized that wait, no, Olympiads are just supposed to be competitions that you go to have fun while doing interesting problems. So I think also like reframing your mindset towards Olympiads and like remembering the point of why you're doing Olympiads, which is ultimately for the love of physics, right? That is quite important. That was quite important for me as well.
Yeah, I agree. That's really important. It's very unfortunate that like in Singapore it's tied to like college admissions. Like that's really unfortunate. And in the US, like I think some people think that like doing well on Olympiads will help them get into college, but it's not like it's super stressed. And there are people in the US who do math Olympiads for fun, which is great. I think you should try and enjoy them as much as you can, since it'll make them a lot more fun.
Yeah, I think so too. So like, do you guys have like any advice to like Olympiad students on like how to like deal with disappointments in the first place?
I don't know. Just like know that if you keep practicing, like eventually you'll get better. Even if maybe you don't like perform really well in a contest, you'll have gotten better. And like contests are based on luck a lot, like whether the problems are your favorite subject or your least favorite subject, especially in math, like there can be many different types of math Olympiad problems. So Olympiads are very luck based, which is why you shouldn't focus too much on just your scores. Like if you feel like you're getting better and learning new things, then you're definitely improving. It doesn't matter if like you haven't qualified for a certain thing, but yeah, just like keep trying and don't give up, and eventually you'll see yourself getting better.
Keith, like, what about you? Like, where like, you don't really have like any more chances anymore. Then like, how do you think you should deal with the disappointment then?
Yeah, so it's like a bit of a difficult problem, right? Because like in cases like mine, we can't really keep trying because there isn't really like a second chance to take an Olympiad again. So what I found really helped in my case was to make sure that I had support systems, especially outside of Olympiad circles, because when when you do really bad in an Olympiad, I feel like it's really awkward for you to go to like rant to your physics friends because some of them did really well, some of them did even worse than you, and it's like just a really difficult conversation to navigate because they aren't really sure how they should deal with your failure as well. It's like a hard space to be in. But fortunately for me, I happen to have like a lot of friends outside of physics as well. So I have like my council friends and my other CCA friends. And I still remember that there was like a short period of time after like this Olympiad where I sort of like ranted to one of these really close friends of mine for like half an hour. And like the entire time she had like no idea like what was going on. She doesn't really understand like the context of physics Olympiads in general, but she was just like there and she was understanding and she listened to the problems that I had. And so I feel like having that kind of support system, like someone to just listen to you, even if they don't really like understand, is a really nice thing to have. And one more thing as well that I feel like this is especially important. It's important regardless of whether or not you fail. Like having support systems outside of this Olympiad circle, because I think when we get too far into like the Olympiad circle, I feel like a lot of people there's this tendency to tend to hyperfixate on Olympiads, and this is how this like whole culture of needing to do well in Olympiads in Singapore even stems up in the first place. And when we have having people outside of it really helps us take a step back, and also it helps us deal with the end of our Olympiad seasons, because even like regardless of whether you fail or succeed, your Olympiad journey will eventually come to an end. And I find that sometimes even people who do well in Olympiads or like meet their expectations in Olympiads still don't end up happy by the end of their Olympiad season, because like they stop the Olympiad, like it just ends, and it's like, you know, the saying goes like it's not the fall that kills you, it's like the stop at the end, right? Like suddenly at the end of the Olympiad season they just find that they have nothing to do, and then like all their Olympiad friends are like, oh okay, Olympiads are done, and then it's just all over, and there's this like feeling of ennui that takes over. And so I think making sure that you like, I don't know, it's a weird way to put having friends, but like diversify your options is a good strategy.
Yeah, I think I really agree, because like I'm not sure whether it's the case in the States, but like for Singapore, right? I think from the period of like 7th grade to like 10th grade, like my whole friend group was just like math Olympiad people. I was just surrounded with like math Olympiad people, and like the culture there like wasn't really that nice either. Like every day we're just like comparing to see, like do you full clear the problem set, or like, I solved this problem and you didn't. And we're like always like comparing, and like after every single Olympiad we will just like see like who got the highest and like feel stressed about it. So but we don't perform right, like we just feel like really disappointed and stuff. But I think as Keith mentioned, like if you like have friends outside of Olympiads too, right? Like I feel like it'll make you realize that Olympiads aren't actually like all of that, and it's just like more of a hobby or like something you do for fun and you enjoy. So like when you actually don't really perform that well, it's more like, I guess the problems weren't like to my taste, or like as long as I improved or like I had fun during the contest, it's all that matters. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree very much about like not having friends who just care about scores, because like there's a way more to life than just getting good contest scores. Like after college and stuff, like you'll need actual like other skills to survive. You'll need to learn how to like communicate with others. And like when you grow up, math won't be everything. Like you won't be able to just do well in math contests and like that's it. So yeah, definitely like try to have friends that care about things other than just math contests. And also like it can be really toxic just like surrounding yourself with people who only care about math scores. So like yeah, try to have friends who care about other things too. And try to not get like too like occupied with just the scores.
Yeah. I think like we can transition into like another like subtopic, I guess, because I think after having talked like Vivian, right, like I think like a very like key aspect of disappointments itself, it's like how we approach Olympiads in the first place. I mean, that said, there was like a stark difference between like how Keith and I approach Olympiads versus like how like Vivian approaches it. Yeah. Keith, so like how do you suggest that we approach Olympiads in the first place?
Um, suggest, I guess, because I'm assuming by like the difference, you mean, just in terms of the kind of stakes that we place on it, or like the way in which we view.
I think it's the way in which we view, because like I feel like for us, right, like me and you, like we don't really view Olympiads as like something that is fun or like something that is like you do like as a hobby or some sort of like that. Or it's more like something that affects our future and like something that's like very high stakes, right?
Yeah, I find it really. It's not just something that happens in the Olympiad cycles as well. Because like if you go into like debate or like quiz bowl or like honestly any like mildly competitive thing in Singapore, for some reason or other, it always ends up being about college. Like I know kids who are like, oh, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna quiz bowl, and then I'm gonna win every quiz bowl, and I'm gonna be like the best quiz bowler, and that's gonna get me into Harvard, right? And I'm like, quiz bowl is supposed to be fun. You're supposed to like enjoy learning things. Like, what are you thinking about? And then these are like 14, 15-year-old kids, and they're like, oh, I'm gonna go to Harvard. I'm gonna quiz bowl in the Harvard. And I'm like, why are you thinking about that right now? So, especially, I think one thing I find really concerning is especially is like the age at which people start thinking about college, because it's definitely great to have like a college plan, early on and like kind of know what you want to do and move and like do things to prepare yourself for that. But at the same time, when it reaches the point where people are like sending their kids to college counselors at 14, and like having just like planning out their entire college admission path at like 14 or 15, when especially in Singapore, when like guys only need to apply when they're like 19 or something, like it's not really, it's a bit excessive in my opinion. And it's definitely part of what contributes to this culture of like needing to succeed in everything, because especially like we place a lot of value. In fact, like if we were to start like picking away at like this value system that Singapore has built, there's like, firstly, why is it really necessary? Is it really necessarily the case that doing all these things will get you into a good college? And then secondly, is it really necessarily the case that you need to get into a good college in America? Because I mean, Singapore's education system, like Singapore's education, like public education services are quite adequate as well. And then even if you do say that you want to get into a really good college and like go there for the experience, is it really worth sacrificing that much of your like childhood, your school days in order to have this experience? And so I guess ultimately that's a value judgment for that each individual needs to make by themselves. But what is concerning to me is that it seems that a lot of people get this, a lot of people have this value judgment made for them from a very early age. And so I think probably the biggest concern to me is like the age factor here. A lot of Singaporeans start Olympiads very young, and they don't start Olympiads very young out of passion for math, but rather, as in, there's so, the thing about it, there are like so many children who take part in like the junior math Olympiads and the junior physics Olympiads. Do you really think all of them have like this deep burning passion for physics or deep burning passion for math? Maybe in America you can get that high like enrollment rates because America is like so big, right? But like in Singapore, we have so few children, with like 20,000 children every year. Let's be real. All their parents are forcing them to like join these Olympiads, and I think that becomes a problem when parents place a lot of pressure on them. Yeah.
Right, Vivian, you look like really shocked when like Keith mentioned that like what people start preparing for college at like 15 or 14. Like it's not like a really big culture difference.
Yeah, that's like pretty insane. I think like in the US, sometimes parents like push their kids to like care about college a little bit, but like not that young. Like I think in America, people generally start thinking about college at maybe 16 at the earliest. But yeah, that's very unfortunate. Like I think kids should definitely be able to enjoy their childhood, and they shouldn't like do things just because their parents are forcing them to, because if so, they will probably end up not actually having a passion for those things as much. So yeah, I agree that like 14 or 15 is definitely too young to be thinking about college. And like college is not like all that matters. Like Keith said, maybe in Singapore the colleges are also like pretty good. So it's not like everything depends on whether or not you get into a US college. And yeah, there's definitely more things that matter than college. Like enjoying high school and actually like doing things that you want in high school is also pretty important.
Yeah. Personally, right. Like I I had like the mindset that like Olympiads were like very important for college and stuff. Like up until like 10th grade or 11th grade, because like so basically I'm Korean, right? So I need something called a permanent residence to like get into the Singaporean IMO team. So I qualified for like the national team like twice, but I was unable to go because of my like permanent residence issue. And at that point, right, I just like completely like threw away the mindset of like, oh, I'm doing Olympiads because I want to go to the IMO. But rather like I realized that the joy of doing Olympiads itself is like the process, like doing the problems in your free time and like doing cool problems, and like the joy when you like actually solve like an insanely like difficult like combinatorics problem or something. So like I think what I can take away is that like to like avoid disappointments and stuff, right? I think we should just like change our mindset towards like doing Olympiads and like doing Olympiads because you enjoy the problem solving process rather than like the tangible benefits that it can give you, I guess. Yeah. I think like I see this like a lot more in like the States, because like I discussed like math problems with like quite a few people, right? And like they all seem to like genuinely enjoy doing math as compared to like in Singapore. Like people like say like, oh, I have to do like XXX amounts of problems today, or like I'm gonna spend XXX amount of hours on math today. But I don't really see that in like the States. Like in the States it's more like I'm doing this because like I like doing it. Yeah. I think that's got a really good mindset that really like Singaporeans should adopt to. Um, so yeah, I think that's it. Do you have like any like concluding remarks?
I'm just gonna drop this here for anyone who happens to be listening in and like needs this, because you know like the whole point of this like podcast is mental health. But ultimately, if you guys are having like troubles and like stresses about Olympiads and mental health, it's really important to talk to someone around you, and sometimes people don't really have anyone near them to talk to. So I'm gonna drop like the national care helplines for both this is Singapore and the US. Vivian, you can correct me if this one isn't like the correct one. So like Singapore, remember that you can call 1-800-202-6868. And in the US, the National Health Hotline is 1-800-273-TALK or 8255 to reach any of the nearest crisis centers. Wait, Vivian, is that kind of the correct one?
I actually don't know.
I didn't know.
I mean, I'm assuming like if you look it up, it's probably the correct one. I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay, yeah. But yes, if y'all are having stresses and troubles, remember to seek help. And stay healthy.
Okay.
Mental health is very important, especially when you're doing Olympiads.
Indeed. Okay, I think that's all. Thanks.
Okay, yeah, thanks.